ABC has announced a Harris-Trump debate for next month. Trump basically reversing course, at least in his words, now saying he will debate Harris, apparently worried the race is now trending away from him. And there's more to the story, and we have that news coming up in this hour. While we begin with Kamala Harris taking her running mate tour through Michigan to address auto workers today.
There's a suggestion that somehow strength is about making people feel small, making people feel alone. But isn't that the very opposite of what we know unions know to be strength?
This is a bit of preaching to the choir, but the choir needs to sing right now. The choir needs to sing. We know that unions built the middle class. The rest of America has to. You know who doesn't believe that? Donald Trump.
You hear both the candidates there on the Democratic side, and this event, built on the rallies they've been holding this week, showing enthusiasm. Trump was actually asked about those large Harris rallies when he spoke to reporters this afternoon. The Harris campaign says they are thrilled with what they call this blue-collar, Midwest, down-home credibility that Governor Walz brings to the ticket. Another shot of energy for Democrats in what is usually, let's remember, a sleepier political season where you have the ice cream trucks out in the August heat and people hang outside, kids run around the neighborhood. Where I've been, most everyone tries to grab an ice cream from the freezer or the truck if they can, a popsicle from one of those trucks that drives through the area, playing the tune we all know, and people have their different favorites. One classic is the patriotic firecracker popsicle you see here. I bet you've seen it before. Those iconic stripes of red, white, and blue. Honestly, it's the kind of treat that any bipartisan leader can appreciate. The spirit that red and blue not only can coexist, but even thrive together. And if the colors drip and combine a little bit, so be it. Now, if these scenes evoke kind of classic suburban Americana, where families and local schools and football games all combine, the kind of stuff Tim Walz has been talking up, well, that's no accident, because the Harris campaign and many Democrats see Walz as living that life, from teacher to coach to veteran. I bet you've heard about it by now, that he embodies it all, that in his political appeal and symbols, Walz, with all of his fun family business, is a firecracker popsicle. Think about it. Here's a red and blue popsicle. You see the red first. If you open the wrapper a bit, you might only see that red initially. You certainly taste the red first. And it's a lot of red up top. But over time, you get to the blue. And that's almost kind of the heart or center of it. You start red but end blue. And most people find, if I may make an observation about popsicle life, they like that blue. Dem strategists see Walz as that political popsicle, the visible red at the top, but so much blue inside, with his many heartland symbols associated with something that this red and MAGA Republican cohort have tried to seize. From the literal color red, right? Red is just a color, but in politics we know what it means, to the flag pins, to the camo, to the entire collection of cultural signifiers which they claim are somehow only specific to red states, even if we know better, from family values and the role of a strong, providing father, to football and its inspiration, its grit, its vibe. There's Coach Walz. To those schools themselves, which MAGA has tried to own and seize, and policy, from what books are allowed to how teachers can include or exclude students in conversations. That's something Walz knows about from actually doing it. To the other symbol that's gotten so much attention lately, the hunting and gun culture. Is that only red, like the political map or the popsicle? Tim Walz is part of gun culture, from the National Guard to Minnesota hunting life. But like a lot of gun owners who could wrongly be seen as somehow purely right-wing red, the top of that popsicle gives way to a more moderate center-left blue. Policies that, in his case, balance gun use and liking guns, which is how he'd put it, with safety. Now, is that all blue? Maybe not. No. He also does not want to confiscate people's guns, but it's certainly more of a flavor mix of red and blue than what you might get at first glance. How serious is this analogy I'm sharing with you tonight? Very. This is the cold truth, if you will. Walz presents and represents some of these symbols, which you probably know about this, and I'm reminding you of it. The right wing has tried to annex as if it was just their own. You're the only one interested in self-defense or hunting or football. Almost sounds unserious, but it is what they've tried to do, despite the actual more diverse, rich nuances of American life and culture in states red, blue, and otherwise. Now, whether it helps or hurts the campaign, who knows, but I can show you that the blue part of the popsicle is backed by facts. Walz has one of the most progressive records of any governor, as the New York Times reports, other outlets noting his progressive cred and record. So that's the cold truth of the popsicle, the red and the blue. And that the red cover, the red top doesn't always predominate. But you might say, okay, all right, I get it, Ari, and okay, but aren't the Democrats liberal? And so they picked a blue guy. What's the difference here? Why is this even news? Well, actually, this is different. If you remember primaries, the parties compete. And that's why we hear about them going right in the Republican primary and left in the Democratic primary. And when Democrats finish the primaries in most normal cycles, they usually, in the general election, often tack to the center. It's so cliched as to almost be unnecessary to say out loud. Biden and Obama certainly did that. And typically, the vice presidential pick comes in this late summer period going into the final 8 weeks, the general election in the fall, when you're tacking center and you're trying to appeal to the so-called swing voters and the independents. Just consider recent Democratic running mates. They were from red states, 2 southern states, I should say 3 southern states, and one of them was sort of purple. And if you might have forgotten, Hillary Clinton's pick, Tim Kaine there on the left. This is a reminder of the look. Now, you might say in certain ways, Walz echoes this. But as I just showed you on blue policy, he goes more left. So you had there the Southern Al Gore from Tennessee. You have Edwards, you might remember. And when Clinton picked Gore in '92, the Times said Gore had tried to position himself in the moderate wing of the Democratic Party. Back in '04, Edwards was touted for the message of economic populism. But why? Because they saw it with this Southern senator as a pitch to independents and moderate Republicans. And Kaine from the Clinton era in '16 was supposed to woo independents and moderate Republicans. Or even Joe Biden, who of course you think of as the president right now, but when Obama picked him back in '08, it was because they wanted a, quote, reliable moderate on crime issues, a seasoned congressional veteran, well-versed in foreign policy, etc. Tim Walz is different. And that may be, interestingly, why Trump has been struggling. Walz and Harris together are hitting a nerve this week. Trump is on defense. He held an unusual press conference. He hasn't done one of those in a long time. He did that today. Walz is putting a spotlight on how MAGA and Trump are out of step in so many ways. And that if you have this stylistic heartland appeal, which I already walked through, and you combine that with the type of blue policies that actually resonate on education, on economic populism, giving kids lunch at school, well, that seems to be working. And they think they can win with that rather than going all the way over to some southern red, moderate, quote unquote, Democrat. The times are changing. And contrast that to what Trump is doing. If I just told you and showed you how instead of going to a red state and the center, they're going blue with just a red topping of culture, contrast that to Project 2025, which we've shown you is staffed by many conservatives in the Trump orbit, with Donald Trump used to praise at the Heritage Foundation and all that. News now, this photo that links Donald Trump directly to the Heritage president, which is the guy running the organization that pushes Project 2025. Quote, they're going to lay the groundwork and detail plans for what our movement will do, is what Trump said. So it's notable that right now, amidst all this, Trump and some of his longest-serving, most loyal, most conservative and controversial Trump aides are trying to run from that. Very different from what Harris did in picking Walz. Here was a little bit of what Trump White House veteran Stephen Miller said in response to my questioning on The Beat last night.
Project 2025 has absolutely nothing to do with the past, present, or future. President Trump and President Trump alone will make his own policies. I can assure you that nobody involved in working on Project 2025 in any substantive fashion is going to be involved in any future policy decision.
You've just said that. The former president said that, as I mentioned. There are issues where we see a kind of overlap.
President Trump is sui generis. He is President Trump. He has his own agenda that is his and his alone.
His own agenda and not a 2025 agenda. There's so much happening, it would be easy to miss some of these larger themes or think that this is the norm. Like I mentioned, it's not the norm. Kamala Harris taught the country something about her leadership, her comfort and interest in inclusion, just like those white dude Zoom calls and the camo hats and all these other things. But it all adds up to something substantive because it does not also include some sort of running from the core substance of the policies that she and the Biden-Harris administration say they are pursuing. Voters, hopefully armed with the facts, can make up their own mind about whether they like that or not. Like I said, I don't know politically in November whether it will help or hurt that they are going more blue and more strong on certain domestic progressive agendas, but they are. And that's different than past Democrats, and it's different than Donald Trump running from the 2025 plans that we know he has. So it is perhaps a firecracker summer. Red and blue coexisting. Tim Walz was one of the most bipartisan members of the House when he served there. That yes, in style and substance, we might not only coexist, but thrive together.